we?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Moshe Chaim's coming here for Ma'ariv. Let's give him a kick.
The post? Yeah.
Oh, we did?
Yeah.
Last he told me he didn't have 6 misbah.
Here?
Yeah.
Ayin Hara. And we have a debate between Reb Chaim Kanievsky and the Rebbe.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So Ayin Hara comes up. It comes up throughout Chumash. Even before you get to Halacha, just certain stories of the Chumash are very much connected to Ayin Hara. 2 things in this week's parsha. Number 1, the beginning, Kisisa. The pasuk says clearly, Kisisa. The Eibusha tells Moshe Mitzvah, whenever you want to count the people, don't count them by head. Count them through each person donating a half a silver coin, a machzis hashekel. And the pasuk says, V'lo yiyeh negef, in order there shouldn't be a plague when you count them, if you're going to count them by head. And Rashi in his commentary says black and white, that if you count people by head, a plague will come, says Rashi, because of Ayin Hara. When you count so many Yidden, there's big numbers, it creates a jealousy and envy, even if there's nobody watching. It creates it, there's forces of impurity that cast an evil eye. It doesn't have to be a physical human person. Forces of klippa, of tumah, can cast an evil eye upon the Yidden, and that will bring a plague. The pasuk says a negef will come. Rashi says through the Ayin Hara, through the negative eye. And Rashi says it actually happened, a story in David HaMelech. David HaMelech tells his nephew and his general Yoav to count the Yidden. He counts them by head. 70,000 Yidden die. The story in Nach, yeah. It's a story in Shmuel.
As a result of Ayin Hara.
So
Plague.
a plague came because he counted them. The pasuk doesn't say Ayin Hara, but Rashi says. In fact, David, after the calamity, he blamed himself, and God, there was a novi called God HaChayzer, the seer, God HaChayzer, went to David and said, "This was your mess up. Why didn't you remember the beginning of Parshas Kisisa, this week's Parsha?" The Torah says clearly a few psukim. It's not just a hint in a pasuk. It's black and white. And we landed Parsha Shkolim as well. We landed a few weeks ago. Kisisa, when you count Rosh B'nai Yisrael, each person has to give something that you count. Don't count them, or else v'lo yeh b'negev, there's going to be a plague, a calamity.
They didn't have the half a shekel, they didn't get counted.
So you don't need the half a shekel particularly. Not every time you count Yidden do you need a half a shekel. There was another way to count Yidden. Well, there's many ways. For example, when Shaul, in last week's Haftarah, when Shaul wages war against Amalek, he raises a huge army of Yidden and he counts his soldiers. Vayif kedeim betloim, it says each Yid donated, there was a lamb. There was a lamb for each Yid. So it wasn't through silver coins, it was through lamb. So it doesn't have to be a machzis hashem. You don't have to give a half a silver coin. That's a separate mitzvah. Once a year, Yidden would always give a machzis hashekel, and with all that money, they would buy sacrifices throughout the year. So there's one mitzvah to give machzis, a half a shekel coin once a year. And if you're counting Yidden at that time of the year, so just count them through the half a shekel. But if you count them other times of the year, you don't have to. It's not a fundraiser each time you count the Yidden. You could do it any way you want, but don't count their heads. Like we see by Shaul, he counted them betloim. Before he went to fight Amalek, with the story with Shaul and Shmuel, it says, Vayifkedem, he counted them betloim with lambs. Anyhow, but Rashi in this parsha says, David somehow forgot, it eluded him. He instructed his nephew Yoav to count the people by head. They did. 70,000 people died. Now, in the Chumash, it doesn't say anything about Ayin Hara. Those words you don't find in the Chumash. It says in the Chumash that there was a plague. Rashi learns that the mechanism of how the plague came to be was through an Ayin Hara, negative eye. You have to understand, sometimes you're counting the Yidden, there's nobody there but the Yidden being counted. So who's the negative eye from? The Yidden themselves? Or it says forces of impurity, not in the physical body, that cast the Ayin Hara. It comes up again in this week's parsha. The Luchas The first luchos we know Moshe broke because when he came down the mountain, lo and behold, the Jews were. We had a shir about this last year. Why, when Moshe was on the mountain, Hashem told him what happened with the Egel.
Right.
Moshe didn't break the luchos. First, he davened for the Yidden. And Fakert, he then took the luchos from Hashem, brought them down the mountain, expecting to give it to us, even though he knew we had stumbled with the golden calf. Hashem told him while he was still on the mountain. Yet Moshe still came down with the luchos. And when he saw it, he broke it. And the oldest question in the book is what Moshe didn't believe Hashem. Hashem told him the Yidden made the Egel. Moshe knew it was true. And yet he still felt we deserved the luchos. But when he came down and he saw that it's for real, what does that
Seeing is
mean?
believing.
So we saw the Sforno says, Hashem didn't tell Moshe about the dancing. He told them they were worshipping. So Moshe's like, no. They said, in Egypt, they were busy serving idols. That's just what, there was a big taiva for it in those days. It was the norm. That was the culture around the world. So the Yidden felt, they went back to their old ways. But they probably feel guilty about it. But when he descended from the mountain, he saw they were dancing. They were dancing. He saw the mechailus, the dancers. Then he realized that he has to shake them out of their slumber by smashing the luchos in front of them. But either way, Moshe.
Smashed them because they were dancing?
No,
That's what the Sefarno
in
says.
your shir, I think you said the letters.
Yeah,
that
but
held
there
it.
was we had a shir a year ago. We saw
on.
many different sources. The Pirkei de Rabbi Lezer says the letters flew up. The letters
It
flew
was
up.
like the ark. You said it carried itself.
Right,
The
exactly.
luchos were like
When
that.
Moshe carried the luchos, which whatever, according to the Pirkei de Rabbi Lezer, this is just on the side. According to the Pirkei de Rabbi Lezer, the luchos were extremely heavy. Moshe was strong, but these luchos were very heavy. But the scripture the Eibishter put inside the luchos, it wasn't just a hollow engraving. There was full of spiritual ink. There were holy letters, not tangible, and that's why there was no ink. It was engraved. If you looked at it, you would just see, a hole. But inside that hole was spiritual ink, spiritual letters, and those letters carried the luchos. When Moshe came down the mountain, says the Pirkei de Rabbi Lezer, and the luchos were in wind shot, so to speak, of the Egel, those holy letters in the luchos went back to heaven. They were no longer carrying the luchos. The luchos now became so heavy, Moshe accidentally dropped them. That's what the Pirkei de Rabbi
What's the
Lezer
Lashon
says.
he uses though?
Of what?
Throwing the luchos.
Oh, it says Vayashlach, he threw them. So the Rashbam himself says that when Moshe saw the Egel, Moshe became so weak that the luchos were falling from his hands. In order they shouldn't crush his toes,
Yeah,
he
remember
gave
that?
them a bit of a nudge. So with the Pirkei de Rabbi Lezer, you give the same answer. And the Rashbam just says that he became weak. When he actually saw it, he Pasha became weak. When he was in heaven, he was fighting for us. That gave him strength. When he came down, he Pasha saw it, he was weak, and accidentally fell. In order he shouldn't squash his toes, he gave it a nudge. In the Pirkei de Rabbi Lezer, we say the same thing. The spiritual letters flew up. It now became too heavy to hold, and he gave a little nudge. But Al
Don't
Kaponim,
text and hold. Who's texting?
must be it.
Letters go
Text.
It's all about.
Moshe then goes up for another 80 days. 40 days to daven for the Yidden. Hashem shouldn't wipe him out. And then for a third set of 40 days, where at the end of that, Moshe comes down with a set of second luchos. When it came to the second luchos, Hashem told Moshe, I want this to be silent, quiet, shashtil.
Today's Gita.
And Rashi quotes, you know why the first luchos met such a disastrous end? Because there was too much fanfare, too much paparazzi. When it was given, there was lightning, there was thunder, there was a shturim. Rashi says because there was too much excitement about it, there was an Ayin Hara. Ayin Hara. An evil eye on the luchos themselves, which were made by the Eibishter. An Ayin Hara can affect even that. So therefore Hashem, by the second luchos, what does Hashem say to Moshe? Before Moshe went up for the third set of 40 days, Hashem tells Moshe, go to your tent. This is after the second set of 40 days, right before the third. Moshe was overnight in his tent. Hashem said, in your tent you're going to see a big slab of sapphire. Carve out the correct measurements for luchos. The leftovers you keep for yourself. Put it in your bank. And bring it up. And I'm going to, together we're going to rewrite what was on the first luchos. But this time Hashem tells Moshe, I don't want anybody to be near the mountain. Not like the first time where the Yidden surrounded it and there was, the Kohanim were here and there's Kainim and no, this time I want it to be Shah still. Right, nothing, exactly nothing. Rashi says because Hashem didn't want an Ayin Hara to affect it, so it had to be silent.
They actually weren't Kohanim. Those were, at that point, they were the... Had they been Kohanim, they would have been all right.
So you have again the idea of Ayin Hara. And it's crazy to think on the Eibish's own luchas an Ayin Hara can have an effect. There was a great commentator, Torah commentator in Turkey, in Izmir, a generation before the Baal Shem Tov, a little older than the Baal Shem Tov, Eliyahu HaKoyen of Izmir. And he wrote fabulous Sfarim, the most interesting Sfarim touching such interesting topics. Medrash Talpiyas, it's mamash, you open it and you can't sleep for 3 days just reading and reading and reading.
Medrash Talpiyas.
Talpiyas is like a tower.
He wrote that, or
He wrote it. He wrote it. It's a collection. It's of many Kabbalistic ideas that he brings. Fast, mamash, unbelievable stuff. He was a beautiful Baal Darshan. I just mentioned in one of the shiurim that he once gave a drasha. People would come to his shul in Izmir, even that weren't from, just for the drasha, not for the davening, not for the kiddush, just for the drasha. And there was one fellow who once came in. And after the drasha, he told Rabbi Eliyahu, Rabbi, I'm not going to tell you what I was going to do, but I will tell you that I ain't going to do it after I heard your speech. He actually writes about himself in one of his many sfarim that if there's one thing he was successful in, it was persuading people not to take their own lives. Yeah. He said his drashas had, either through his drashas or one-on-one, he says he saved many, suicide. The interesting, Anyhow, he has a sefer called Agodas Eliyahu where he asks this kasha. How could an Ayin Hara affect the Eibishter's own luchas? Like how? He has a big problem with it. So it's very hard to understand, and I'm not going to give an answer. I'm just saying he has a big kasha on that. It boggles the mind. What does it even mean that on the luchas the Eibishter made an Ayin Hara? So some Mekubalim Taina. It was the Yidden's sin. The Yidden, when the Yidden sinned, we corrupt the luchas were for us. When we sinned, we corrupted ourselves. We corrupted the luchas. It was because of the Yidden that an Ayin Hara was able to affect the luchas. It's because of our sin. That's what Reb Chaim Falaji wants to say. Chaim Falaji, one of the great Sfardische Gedolim, 150 years ago. But you have to figure out how it works. But that's what he says, because the Yidden sin and the luchas were for us, so we dragged down the luchas through our averis. We dragged it down to the point that any negativity can destroy the luchas. Frightening thing. Al Kapanim. So you have Ayin Hara twice in this week's parsha. Throughout Chumash you have it much earlier. Rashi is a big believer in Ayin Hara. He throws it in all the time. We have it when Yosef's brothers come to Mitzrayim. They all enter through separate gates. Right? And that's why Yosef was able to say, you guys are Meraglim. You're spying out. They came in, one guy, and every single one, you come together. So Rashi says, why Taka did they separate? Yankov told them, if you're going to enter together, strong, young, healthy fellows in one gate, people will look at you, they'll cast an evil eye, an Ayin Hara, and you can be hurt. So Rashi throws it in right over there. He throws it in even earlier. What?
There it sounds more practical because they were strong. But
Right.
But the Rashi.
Right, yeah, Ayin Hara. That's why Yankov, it ended up working against him. Yosef used that as his, ammunition with which to charge them. Oh, yeah, we're going to get there, yeah, sure, we're going to get there. And earlier in Chumash, Sarah twice used an Ayin Hara to harm Hagar. Once in Lech Lecha, once in Vayera. In Lech Lecha, Sarah and Avram don't have kids for years. So Sarah's maidservant Hagar, an Egyptian princess, she marries Avram. She conceives a baby, and then she feels like she's running the show, she's running the house, and she disrespects Sarah. Sarah sends her flying.
Big mistake.
And Rashi says that the fetus that was in the stomach, she miscarried. Hagar miscarried. How? Through Sarah's Ayin Hara, Pasha, through her piercing eye, killed the baby. So too in Vayera, Yishmael's already born, he's getting older, he's harassing, fighting non-stop with Yitzchak. So the whole battle, Sarah tells Avram, we're going to get rid of them. Avram doesn't want, and the Eibush has to intervene. He tells Avram, listen, you got to listen to your wife. Kol asher toimer elecha. So whatever Sarah says, you got to listen. Shema b'koila. And Avram had to send them out, and Hagar had to carry Yishmael on her shoulders. And Rashi says, Yishmael was the day before was running around town. Now he can't move. Says Rashi, Sarah put an Ayin Hara into Yishmael, and he was about to die. That's how powerful the Ayin Hara is. It can kill somebody. It can kill someone. Yeah. So you see, Rashi, it's full. Over Chumash, Rashi is a big believer that Ayin Hara Mamish has the power to destroy. And we're going to see more about this. Okay. But you see, it comes up twice in our parsha. We're going to see a little bit about the Rambam's opinion, and we're going to deal with a big kasha on the opinion of Rabbi Yosef Kaira, and we'll see a fascinating answer, all in the next 60 minutes. We begin. Number one is Rabbeinu Bechaya. It's not in this week's parsha, it's in Parshas Vayetze. Yankov has his business deal with his shver. Yankov tells his shver that I'll work for you, and you know what sheep I'm going to take? Only the ones that have funny spots, like all the details that are there. Lavan thinks this is incredible. If Yank is willing to do that, for sure. And as fortune has it, the Eibishter had it, all of Yankov's entire flock gave birth to spotted sheep, and Yankov made a lot of money. Very unexpected. So Rabbeinu Bechaya wants to know, Yankov had a dream where he's in Parshas Vayetze, where he sees Malachim helping him, that his animals, his sheep, should give birth to spotted sheep. But for Yankov, that wasn't enough. He would get his sheep, the female sheep, when they would drink water by the basin of water, he would have them face sticks that Yankov ever so carefully designed and etched out, and they would see the spots, in order that when the male sheep would kahaba with them, this image that the female sheep had would affect the kids. So Ben Bechai wants to know, Yankov had a dream. He saw Malachim helping him, that all of the sheep would give birth to spotted sheep. So why did he have to do the tricks with the sticks as well?
The source for the sticks is Rabbeinu Bechaya?
What?
The source for the sticks is Rabbeinu Bechaya?
What do you mean the source for the sticks?
Like the whole story that he put the...
No, it's in Vayetze, it's in the Psukim. Rabbeinu Bechaya wants to know, why did he need to do that? In the Psukim, he also has a dream where he sees Malachim helping him. So let the Malachim do the job. So he says, Ha'echad, number one. Says Rabbeinu Bechaya, Lahalim Hanes. Yankov did this whole spiel with the sticks in order it shouldn't be apparent to be a huge miracle. If all of his sheep only gave birth to spotted children, that's mamish, that's not natural at all. So to cover over, to conceal the miracle, Kedei Shaloi Tishlot by Ayin Hara. Why, says Rabbeinu Bechaya? Because otherwise, if people hear about this thing, people are going to talk about it, and people will be jealous, and it's going to, through a negative eye, could hurt the whole deal. Now, says Rabbeinu Bechaya, let me tell you a little bit about Ayin Hara. V'chein timtze she'amar Elisha leGehazi, a well-known story in the Sefer Malachim. Elisha gave a bracha to a certain woman to have a child. The Shunamis, she has a child. The child, a couple years old, headaches, passes away. The mother runs to Elisha and says, I didn't ask for this kid. You gave him to me as a bracha, and now he passed away. Elisha tells Gehazi, V'kach mishanti, take my stick biyodcha, v'lech and go. If you find anyone, don't say hello. If someone says hello to you, don't respond. Take my stick to the face of the kid. Now, V'hoisa kavonis Elisha, why did Elisha want that to happen? Says Rabbeinu Bechaya, Elisha didn't want Gehazi to speak to people and say, you have a stick that you're going to bring a kid back to life. And then people will give a Ayin Hara and will destroy the whole mission. You shouldn't speak with people. He should not reveal his mission. The purpose was an Ayin Hara shouldn't be cast. So therefore, Elisha was swearing Gehazi to secrecy. Therefore, don't nod, don't turn left or right, don't speak to nobody. But the Gehazi loy nishma, he wasn't careful. Kasher tzivo. V'gila hadover. He says the psukim there say Gehazi went. He put the stick on the kid and nothing happened. It's very strange. When Elisha was Elisha, why did Elisha's promise? Why didn't it work? Why didn't it work? So says I'll tell you why. Gehazi spoke to people. You know what I have in my hand? You know what I'm about to bring a kid back to life? V'sholto was Ayin Hara. And that's why it says, Lo hey kids hanor, the kid didn't awake.
We had a different story with the dog.
We had another story that on the way, Gehazi found a dead dog and he wanted to see if the stick actually works. And he put it and it used exactly. And he brought a dead dog back to life. And therefore when he went there to bring the kid back to life, the stick had already lost its power. And then we spoke about Gehazi had to have a gilgul in the body of a dog. Says Rabbeinu Bechai, that wasn't the word. It was Pashat Gehazi spoke to someone, and someone's like, "Oh, you have a miraculous stick," and with envy, jealousy, or this or that, boom, the whole miracle disappeared. Va'al titma, don't wonder, Bozeh, im koyach ayin hara godel kol kach shu shoylet afilu b'dvorim shanes mispashet behem. His ayin hara is so powerful that it can affect even something which is miraculous. In other words, you'd think maybe something which is holy and a miracle, the work of God, maybe a ayin hara can't affect. He says, no, it could. This is fascinating. Leah has 3 kids from the Shvatim. Reuven, Shimon, 4 kids, Yehuda. Leah knows Yankov has 4 wives. Yankov has 4 wives. Leah, Rachel, Bilhah, and Zilpah. Only 12 boys are going to be born. That's 3 each. She has a 4th, and she says, thank you, Eibishter, for giving me more than I deserve. By her saying that, she aroused envy. Oh, all of a sudden, whether it was the people around her, or like we said, the forces of impurity, oh, you're publicizing that you got more than you deserve. You know what the pasuk says right after that? Vatam moed miledas, no more kids. That's the pshat. Sha'amr, she said, bishul dibur echad, one word of lay. She said, I thank God. Shenosna haydah. What was she doing? She was thanking the Eibishter. Beben Revi on the 4th kid. Al Sheikida on the fact that she realized that she took more than her portion. Shalat ba Ayin Hara. And Ayin Hara affected her that she couldn't conceive. Hushakas of miyad. That's why it says right away, Vatam moed miledas. Look at the next, on the left-hand side. Va'oid, more than that. There was never a greater miracle that was the hands of the Eibishter more than Matan Torah. A negative eye affected it. V'chein Amr Razal, and Taka the Gemara, the Razal say somewhere, Rashi quotes this as well, we said before, why were the first luchas broken? It doesn't mention because we worship the golden calf. The fisha nitnu b'pumbi was given with it was ostentatious. Sholto be'en hayin hora. There was an ayin hora had an effect. V'nishtabru. Therefore, the luchas shniyas which were given betzina quietly shenemar v'ish lo yale imach. Moshe is told in this week's parasha, no one should ascend with you. V'gam ish no one should appear in the entire mountain. Lo sholto be'en hayin hora. And he finishes off his paragraph by saying that's why Yankov wanted to do this thing with the sticks. If he would just leave it be and word would spread that all of his flock is giving birth to spotted animals perfectly for his side of the deal, which he arranged to get those spotted animals, it would cause people would talk about it, people would schmooze about it, an ayin hara would be cast upon him, and the whole thing would be farfal and would be lost.
Like the idea of where's the problem with that? Where's the concept of Ayin Hara come that so people talk about it? That's a bad thing.
We're gonna see. Let's see a little bit more. We're gonna see, according to many, Ayin Hara is literally physical destruction. A person has a poison in their eye. So we'll talk about just a moment. Okay. So Rabbeinu Bechaya sticks it into the story of Elisha and Gehazi, the story of Leah, the luchas, and the story of Yankov and the sheep. Fine. Look at number 2 for a moment. Actually, in fact, not number 2. Go to number 3. Number 3, the Maharal. It's a Maharal in Chumash. The story when Sarah is telling Avraham to throw Hagar and her kid Yishmael out of the house. V'achaz tochama, number 3. Sarah cast an Ayin Hara on Yishmael, and he was caught up by fever. Right, we mentioned that before, an Ayin Hara. Fine. There's a well-known kasha. V'hada amrinan, beperek hapoyalim. The Gemara says in Baba Metzia, ad Yankov loy hava chulsha. Till Yankov, no one ever got ill. The Gemara says in Baba Metzia a few fascinating statements. And Daf Peis Ayin. One of them is until Avram, no one ever got old. While Avram was alive, his son Yitzchak looked just like him. And the Gemara says people were talking to Yitzchak thinking it was Avram, to Avram thinking it was Yitzchak. Avram told the Eibishter, this is nicht I can say that Azoi. He said, Eibishter, that as somebody ages, their appearance needs to change. So Hashem said, great, we'll start with you. And that's why it says, Avram Zokein Bo Bayomim. It's a chiddush. Avram was the first one that not only was on in years, but Zokein, he became old. That's one statement. The Gemara continues, until Yankov, Loi Hava Chulsha, nobody became weak, nobody was ill. Until the days of Yankov, nobody was ever ill. When somebody would die, they would sneeze. And it says in the Medrash Pirkei de Rabbi Lezer, just like when the Eibishter created Adam, he blew the neshama into his nostrils, so too a person would be walking in the marketplace, the Medrash says in Pirkei de Rabbi Lezer, and boom, he would just sneeze. It doesn't mean whenever someone sneezed, they would die. It means is when they would die, it would come through a sneeze.
And I would be like, no.
That's where the minhag to say bless you, Gesundheit, or even by the goyim, it's from this tradition. It's from this medrash that people would die. Just like it came in through the nose, it would leave through the nose. Probably still leaves through the nose if you're able to see when the soul leaves.
Soul leaving.
Right. As they try and depict in That's it. So Yankov says, Eibishter, no one, if you start walking in the street and then boom, God takes you away, so no one can ever prepare for after their death. No one could ever give a will to their kids. No one could ever give their last will and testament, instruct their kids. There was no such thing as going, surrounding the bed and hearing the last words, because whenever someone would die, it was completely a surprise. So Yankov says, Eibishter, you can't do that. Before a person dies, there needs to be some forewarning so a person can get all of his affairs in order. So Hashem said, Yankov, we're going to start with you. That's why it says in Parshas Vayechi, Yosef was told, Hine, behold, avicha choyle, your father is sick. Hine means it's behold. What does behold mean? It means nothing. Surprise. It means surprise. Hine, behold, something. Avicha, your father's sick? Father's sick. So that the Gemara says, until Yankov, no one was ever ill. Yankov came, he asked Eibishter, what?
Yitzchak's eyes.
It wasn't sickness, it was just Vaticheno Ein of Merois, just couldn't see. It was the Ketairis of all their Avodah Zarah. Okay.
So it's
We'll see.
Adam?
So let's good, you ready, jump good. The simple reading of the Gemara is Yankov told Eibishter, no one ever gets ill before they die. So Hashem says, you know what, you're going to be the first one. And Yankov got ill, and he was taka, he called his kids to come around his bed, and he gave them all the brachas, and exactly what Yankov had wished for. Hashem said, you know what, if that's what you'd like, I'll give it to you. And then the Gemara says a third thing. No one ever became ill and was healed until Elisha, which was hundreds and hundreds of years after Yankov. Meaning after Yankov, if somebody became ill, they would die from that. But for someone to be seriously ill and to recover, not until Elisha. And the Elisha you're talking about already well into the first Beis HaMikdash. Many, many years after Yankov. Fine. That's what the Gemara says. So the Maharal quotes a kasha, if until Yankov no one ever got sick, so how did Sarah cast an Ayin Hara into Yishmael? To the point that Yishmael became a piece of jelly, and his mother Hagar had to carry him. So correct, the Maharal, the Hadar, we say in Perkapoilim, ad Yankov till Yankov lo yadachul, no one was ill. If nobody was ever ill till Yankov, so how did Sarah do this to Yishmael? I thought no one ever got sick. The Tiritz Hara Aim, so the Mizrahi says, Rabbi Eliyahu Mizrahi was a big Rav in Turkey 500 years ago. Hainu, he says, Chayli B'dei Shemayim. The Gemara is talking about at the hands of heaven. Avul Chayli Haba B'dei Adam. But if Reuven would, if somebody would punch you and you can get injured. That was always that from day one, like when Cain killed Hevel. The Hainu Ayin Hara, says the Mizrahi, Ayin Hara is not in the hands of heaven. If Reuven casts an Ayin Hara and damages Shimon, it's like Reuven punching Shimon. Haya'af koidim lochein. Ayin Hara is like a chayli which comes from man to man. It was even before Yankiv. The Ayin Hara kilu hika oisa becherev. Says the Mizrahi, Ayin Hara is mamash like hitting someone with a sword. There's a poison that a person has in their eye that they're able literally to cast upon somebody or someone's property. It's a natural phenomenon. Yeah, mamash. Exactly. We're going to see about that. And usually hezek re'ih is when you look at someone, you invade their privacy. So you damage them because you take away their privacy. Here you could damage someone with your eyes. Literally with your eyes. The truth is, the Michtav Me'eliyahu, Reb Dessler, was one of the big, 100 years, one of the big Litvischer thinkers. He believes the way Ayin Hara works is, if Shimon flaunts some, gifts that God gave him, his looks, his strength, whatever it might be, he flaunts them, and, Yankul is jealous. So says the Michtav Me'eliyahu, when the Eibishter gives Shimon the brachas, he doesn't want it to come at the expense of somebody else being jealous, being envious, feeling down, feeling hurt. The gifts God gives you should not be a source of grief to somebody else. And if they are, then the Eibishter will rejuggle and redecide if you're worthy for it. So says the Michtav Me'eliyahu that it's really Ben Adam. If someone else is jealous, it doesn't go directly between him and you. It goes back to heaven. In heaven, they redecide if you really deserve those gifts, if flaunting them causes other people grief.
It still is up to the Eibishter.
What?
Then based on that, it's still up to the Eibishter.
He learns it between the Eibishter. It's different. I'm saying the Mizrahi, he says clearly, it's Ki'ilu Hikoyse Becher, black and white. Says the Mizrahi, the ain't suffix, there's no question, Shacherev Hayoisi Chayli, that a sword would cause somebody a wound, no question. Now I want you to know the Maharal agrees to this, not here, but the Maharal agrees to this in a number of his Sfarim. He has a sefer in the Sivas Olam. The Maharal writes mamish the same thing as the Mizrahi, that Ayin Hara doesn't go through the Eibishter. It's direct. If you're jealous of somebody and you're envious, your eye and your thought can literally destroy. But the Maharal point here disagrees with the Mizrahi. He says, V'davar ze ein loy tam. He doesn't like the pshat of the Mizrahi. Ki roiv chaloy, most illnesses heim, al yidei Ayin Hara, come through Ayin Hara. Most of them come through Ayin Hara. K'de'isa b'perek ha'peilim, like it's brought in Bab Mitzvah, on v'heiser Hashem mimcho kol chayli, God will remove all illnesses. Zu Ayin Hara, it refers to Ayin Hara, like it says there. Look at number 4. We have the Gemara, look at number 4 right next to it. It's a Bab Mitzvah, Daf Kuf Zayin. V'heiser Hashem, God will remove mimcha from you also, all illness. Omar Rav said, Rav Zu Ayin. It's talking about a negative eye. When the pasuk says Hashem will remove from you all illness, it refers to an Ayin Hara. That's the source of everything. Says the Gemara, Rav L'tameh. Rav goes according to his opinion. The Rav, because Rav Solik, he once went to Beit Kivri to the cemetery. Ovad Maida Ovad, he did what he did. He communed with the dead. Rashi there says that Rav knew a certain incantation to say on a caver, and he could find out how the person died. So, for investigations, that would be very helpful. He could just, he doesn't need the body for the whole, he just, bury the guy. So, I'll speak to him after he's buried. What? Okay, we had a shir about that as well. We had a long shir about that once on Sunday. Yeah. No, that was one. That was about Koi. We had 2. We had one about. We had a.
Tisha B'Ayin, 99%.
Omar, so Rav said after speaking to the dead. By the way, the Aruch Reb Nosson of Rome, who was even older than Rashi, he says Rav did this in a dream. It was a Shilas Chalam. He asked a Shilas in a dream, summoning angels that they should reveal to him in a dream why these people died. But Rashi learns he actually went to the graves. He knew a specific lachas, a specific incantation, through which he could find out from the dead. The simple reason why it's not Derish Shel HaMesim is because when you speak to the soul, Derish Shel HaMesim is when you're looking for the body. If you speak to the soul, there's no Derish Shel HaMesim. That's what the Uraim says. Anyhow, says the Gemara, we're still on it before. Amar, so Rav said, you know what I found out from speaking to the dead? Tishin v'tisha, 99 out of 100, ba'ayin ra. They all died because of an ayin hara. The echad, one guy, b'derech, one guy died from natural causes. Shmuel Omar, he says, no. Shmuel says, when Hashem says, I'll remove from you all illnesses, zeh ruach, it's the negative wind. Because Shmuel Tameh, Shmuel also l'shitasa. He's the Amar Shmuel Akol Baruch. Shmuel says anyone that dies, it's because of a negative wind. And the Gemara there already says, well, what if someone has open wounds? Shmuel says, no. If not for negative winds, the wounds would all close.
Negative wind.
Haruach. I don't know.
Not Ayin Hara.
No. It's a physical wind. Air. I don't know. It's
Bacteria, germs.
yeah, germs, air. I don't know. In other words, if you were living in space, if there was no.
Environment.
Yeah, I don't know if
Virus,
the atmosphere is
infection.
faceless. It's whatever.
Time A.
No, in other words, a wound itself wouldn't kill you. It's the air, whatever is in the air that contaminates it, infects it. You know, if there's nothing, if no air, there's no infections, whatever it might mean. That's shit to Shmuel. Shmuel was a doctor as well and an astronomer. But Rav said it's all ayin hara. So going back to the Maharal's kasha on the Mizrahi is
Who's the halacha like between Rav and Shmuel?
this is
No, just general.
generally it depends. By monetary laws we pass them like Shmuel, and by Isur Veheter, if things are permissible or prohibited, we go like Rav. So here's the thing. So the Mizrahi said, the Gemara says until Yankov no one got ill, that means in the hand of heaven. But of course you could punch someone and hurt them. And an ayin hara works exactly the same way. And that's how Sarah did to Yishmael what she did. So Frek the Maharal, according to Rav, that everything comes from ayin hara. So then there's no difference of before Yankov and after Yankov. If you, the Mizrahi, are right that before Yankov there was ayin hara, and Rav says that 99% of illnesses comes from ayin hara, so then before Yankov you had everything anyhow. So what's going on? So the Maharal therefore learns different. Vaniyam, the Maharal says like this: Sha'afcha, in essence, he agrees to the Mizrahi in essence that ayin hara is mamish Reuven harming Shimon. He writes that in the other Sfarim. The two of them, I don't know why I said Rebbe Leo Dessler, the Litvische philosopher, believes it all goes through heaven, like we said. But the Mizrahi and Maharal, both of them write very clear. It's mamish like Reuven punching Shimon, Reuven taking a sword and stabbing Shimon. But as far as this question, Maharal says like this.
What do you mean when you say Reuven? I mean, I don't know. I'm feeling a little-
There's no evil eye.
I'm trying
There's no
to
Ayin
rope
Hara.
you into the
There's
discussion.
no Ayin Hara.
I mean, we're
If
not
you
related.
notice, Shimon is
We
always
are
the
related,
victim.
I guess.
Shimon is always the victim. Reuven is the perpetrator. Reuven always ends up okay. It's Shimon that gets getting cut up. The Maharal says, "Vani Omer, I say, sha'af cholim min hashamayim have a kamoy da have a b'dei. Maharal says in this discussion, I'll tell you, sickness from heaven, sickness from man, it's all the same, and they both existed before Yankov. But he says, you know what the Gemara meant? No one became weak. There was pain without weakness. That's what he says. The Ein Chiluk, there's no difference. Before Yankov and after Yankov, there was illness from Reuven hurting Shimon, there was illness from Ayin Hara, and there was illness stam from God. But before Yankov, like have a chulsha, no one became weak, just pain. To be sick like it is today, cholash, to be weak. That Yankov, there was no weakness. Rak tsar, only the pain. You would hurt. You couldn't walk because of a chamimus bereisha, because of the headaches, the pain in your head. But not weak. Not weak.
Pain, not weak.
In other words, someone who suffers from headaches could be two reasons why they're stuck in bed. One is because the headaches Pashut makes them weak. The other one is it's just the pain alone. Says Maharal, before Yankiv was Chamimus, was just the pain. Anyway, begufay hapoel boy, and the pain throughout the body. V'hayu hamazogim boy misnagdim achei koyev loy. The inner parts of his body were not in harmony, and he would have pain. The ein an nefesh b'shleimus, and therefore he wasn't functioning properly. That always existed. But she chulsa, to be weak, the hainu cholash machmas chel yipashet, that that wasn't there. That's fascinating. So the Maharal and the Mizrahi are arguing about what was the difference before Yankiv and after Yankiv. The Mizrahi says before Yankiv, nobody would ever be naturally unwell. If somebody hurt you, or Ayin Hara as well, which is equal to that. The Maharal says, I agree to you that Ayin Hara is mamish like Levi hurting Shimon. Mamish like Yankiv hurting Beryl. But I believe before Matan Torah you could get naturally sick as well, just not weakness, only pain. Fine. But upon him, that part of the Maharal is not important for our discussion. What's important is that Be'ikr, the vort of the Mizrahi, that Ayin Hara is mamish like stabbing someone, the Maharal writes in a number of his form. In the Sivas Olam he writes it, and he writes in his commentary on Gemara as well. Just like the Mizrahi, it's mamish like a sword. Mamish like a sword. Fine. I will tell you though that there is a Tosfos in Baba Basra. I didn't get it on the sheet. The Tosfos in Baba Basra. I looked through the whole yeshiva. I couldn't find the Baba Basra. I have to start reading Gemaras from home too. Like nothing.
Baba Basra, it's one of the regulars.
Yeah, you would think. Tosfos asks. The Gemara in Baba Basra says, we said in the alchemy shield, Avram used to walk around with a rock hanging from his necklace, and anyone that was ill would look at it, and miyad misrap would be healed right away. Right. To me, this is the bigger. This is the philosopher's stone. Anyhow, I know you didn't buy it, but I'm still convinced it fits to all the descriptions. That's what the Gemara says. Avram had a rock around his neck. Whoever was ill would look at it and would be healed. So Tosfos says, Avram lives before Yankiv. I thought before Yankiv no one's sick. So Tosfos gives two answers, but one answer is he gives the same thing as the Mizrahi. Tosfos says, it's talking of people that were hurt. Reuven stabbed Shimon, so Shimon has a wound.
Second one.
So he gives the same answer as the Mizrahi, that a Reuven Yankov could hurt Shimon. Yeah, that always existed. From heaven, that didn't happen till Yankov. The other answer he quotes from Rabbeinu Tam and his nephew, the Rida. Both of them said, people always got sick, not deathly sick. No one ever got deathly sick before they died. People were sick. So Yankov's Tanat Hashem was, death is still spontaneous, because no one ever gets deathly ill before they die. The Chiddush of Yankov was an illness that leads into passing away. But Stam illness there was, and that's the other answer Tosfos says. Fine. Al Kaponim though.
People got sick, but knew they had to get out of it. So if you got sick, according to that, you knew you were going to come. You knew you were going to come out alive. Can't die from sickness. I'm good. I'm walking fine.
There was a guy in the Holocaust. There was a Yid in the Holocaust who beforehand, I think one time he wasn't wearing tzitzis properly or something. He was. It looked like he was degrading the mitzvah of tzitzis, and his Rebbe told him, "You're gonna die wearing your tzitzis."
He never wore tzitzis.
Mamash a curse. During the Holocaust, he could never wear. They wouldn't let you wear tzitzis. He knew he was not going to die, so he would run into the kitchen. He did crazy to save people's life. He was invincible because his Rebbe cursed him, "You're going to die wearing tzitzis." So without tzitzis, he was invincible. Yeah, he wrote lots of stories. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the munah.
Not the tzitzis.
It's the curse. That's the word of a curse of even a curse of a Rebbe is a bracha. We know Chazal say better the curses of Moshe than the blessings of Bilam, because the blessings of Bilam ultimately turned into curses. But you see from this story, when a tzaddik curses you, it's a bracha. I said the story of the. What time is it?
9:35.
I'll throw in the story, and if I regret it, I'll regret it. But this happened a little bit before the Holocaust. This happened. let's say about the year 1900, that the Avnei Nezer, the great Avremele of Sochotshov, incredible big Gaon and a Chassidish Rebbe, and he had a chassid who was married a number of years, no kids, and he would always ask his Rebbe, never got an answer. It was one Simchas Torah. He sees the Avnei Nezer is mamish joyous spirits, so he runs over. He says, Rebbe, please, a bracha for a kid. The Avnei Nezer stops. He looks very serious and he says, "You want a son, a galach?" From then on, he never asked. Years pass. In 1910, the Avnei Nezer passes on. His son, the Shem Shmuel, is now Rebbe. It was Simchas Torah, and everyone's dancing. But this chassid was a depressed soul, and he was just standing on the side. And the Shem Shmuel approaches him and says, "I'm going to give you a bracha. Zog Amen. I give you a bracha. This time next year, you're going to have a boy." And the chassid Hashem, he said, "Rebbe, your tata said the kid's going to be a galach." So the Shem Shmuel closed his eyes for a minute, and he opened them and he said, "Von deswegen, nonetheless, I give you a bracha, say Amen." The guy Taka had a boy. During the Holocaust, this entire town where the boy lived was wiped out except for him. He masqueraded as a galach. He walked around like a galach, and the Germans didn't touch him. After the Holocaust, he threw off the thing, and he was a Flum Yid again. So the curse became true. But ultimately, it was saved his life. So you see how a curse of a tzaddik could become a bracha. Anyhow, so what we see so far is that Ayin Hara, according to many, is mamish. It's bein adam la adam. The jealousy. It doesn't have to go through God. It's pashut. It's a force in nature. Now, join me in number 2. Number 2 is a Gemara in Bab Metzia, the same place as the Gemara number 4. It's on 2 sides of the same daf. Number 2. Amalei Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda said, "LeRabin bar Rav Nachman," to Rabin, the son of Rav Nachman. "Rabin achi, Rabin, my brother." They weren't literally brothers, but they were good friends. "Loi siz ben ara," don't buy property dismicha lamasa, near the big city. In other words, you're going to buy a field, and hopefully you'll grow things in that field. You don't want to have a field right by the entrance to the city. Then everyone who walks in, they go, "Oh, look what this guy has growing." You know, you're asking for trouble. And what's the source? The Amar Abivo, Amar Avhuna, Amar Rav. Back to the Shitta of Rav. Rav says, and this is a very important halacha, Asur lo'ila adam, it's forbidden for a person, sheyamoy, to stand, al stei chaveira, next to his friend's field, b'shah shaymedes become myself. When your friend's stalks are at their, it's the season, things are growing, you're not allowed to look. Again, Rav's halacha is, if your friend, your neighbor, has the fruits are growing, the crops are coming in, you have no right, it's asur to stand and watch. Why? Look at Rashi, right? And asur la'adam, shelo yafsidena, you shouldn't destroy it by Ayin Hara. It's a Rashi in Gemara. So it's not just in Chumash, it's a halacha. The Gemara says asur, and Rashi says, you know why? You'll destroy it. Your Ayin Hara will push it, destroy it. Literally will destroy it.
It applies to everything, not specifically to this other...
Everything.
So if you walk into your friend's business and business is booming, you could make it out.
If you feel you better get out. Yeah, mamish, 100%. Yeah.
Oh.
Everything needs to be discreet. By Yidden, alles needs to be discreet. Even the luchas, even the original luchas, it was too public. Boom. Even God isn't. That was the Shiloh who said of the Yoah Kayin, that how could the Eibush himself be so? So he said, Chaim Falad, said it was our sin that corrupted the luchas. But you see, nothing's safe in theory. But this, so what's Rav Yehuda telling his friend Rav Nachman? Rav was talking about a case, you have a personal prohibition to gaze at somebody's crops because you are going to destroy it through your Ayin Hara, so you shouldn't look b'chlal. But therefore, says Rav Yehuda, he tells Ravin to don't buy a property right near town because not everybody's going to be careful about this prohibition, right? They're going to look and they will destroy it with their Ayin Hara. Now, this, if you open up Masechta Baba Basra. The beginning Baba Basra speaks about two people living next to each other, and one of them can force the other to build the wall and pay half of the wall. And the Mishnah and the Gemara discuss if it's two homes next to each other, two gardens, two fields, and the halachas vary. The Gemara says over there very clearly that, just like between two homes, you could force each other to have a wall 4 amos tall, 6.5 feet, to make sure that your neighbor can't look in, right? And the Gemara says so too by gardens where it's just produce growing, right? And your friend isn't sunbaking. It's not that right. Your friend's not sunbaking there that he wants his privacy. It's a vegetable patch. But he does, and the Gemara there says that one person can force the other one to build a wall, mashma 4 amos, so the other person shouldn't look. And the Gemara in Bar Basra quotes the Gemara we saw in number 2, that Rav said, Shimon is not allowed to look at Levi's field, because Shimon, if he gets a tad of jealousy, he will cause destruction. And the Gemara in Baba Basra therefore says, two neighbors, one can force the other to build a wall in between the two gardens in order the other one shouldn't cause any damage to his Ayin Hara.
Nice outside.
But look in the Rambam in number 5, here we have a big problem. What?
Talk about the claim of Matan.
Look at number... when the Medrash discusses how the Yidden fell asleep by Matan Torah, they were lying on the floor. The guy said that there was a beautiful breeze. It was warm. It was outside. Exactly. Right.
Snowbirds.
But look at number 5. Number 5, we come across a well-known Rambam. This is where we get to the Rambam. The Rambam is in the laws of Shchenim, of neighbors, and is discussing those halachas from the beginning of Baba Basra. And the Rambam says, number 5, how tall does the wall have to be between two neighbors? Ein pachas ma'arba amos. If it's two homes, you can make a 4 amos wall, 6.5 feet. V'chein begin so to buy a garden. One can coerce the other to pay. Lahavdil ginosem begins to divide between the gardens, but only with a mechitza which is 10 tfachim tall. 10 tfachim is about 80 centimeters, about 3 feet. Yeah. What does it do? The idea of a 10 tfachim mechitza does come from the Gemara. What it helps is that if someone's stumbling into your garden, you can't say, "Oh, I just happened to stumble in." If there's no fence at all, then someone I was walking on the street, I didn't realize I fell in. Right? They're busy stamping, But if there's a 10 tfachim, a 3 feet gate around your property, then if anyone's inside, it means they're trespassing.
A divider would it be enough?
What?
A divider.
That is a 10 tfachim.
I think in the Gemara there's discusses another thing called a divider.
There's
what's the word?
Like an empty
Hitzi v'higi.
No, like a divide, not a 3-foot wall. Something that's just like a
rope.
thing that shows that it's like a difference in.
Well, you see the Rambam. There's a Mesipus. I'm not sure what you're referring to, but look at the Rivet on the side. Separate one garden to your garden from his garden.
But
The
not
border.
seeing,
Right? Yeah, you can still see. So the Rambam is very strange. The Gemara clearly seems to say 4 amos. Like, look at the Rivet right on the side. Says the Rivet, Amar Avram zeh shibush. This is an error. Elokaisal arba amos. It's 4 amos by a garden. The Gemara clearly says that a garden and a house are the same, and the Gemara says because by a garden, your friend is prohibited to look at your stuff, like we saw in Gemara number 2.
It's not a field. A gina is like you have a cabbage patch. It's a small little thing in your
but
house.
the Gemara in Baba Basra says about a gina. A gina is vegetable. It's there's choshev.
The koim is a field. That's the way it's described.
Yeah. But where do you have the more expensive? Where do you have the what are the truffle mushrooms grown? It's a garden of truffle
produce. You
right.
Don't take my cucumber.
So
not for
so that's the kash of the Rivet. The Rambam holds whenever you have vegetation, you can never force your friend to contribute to a 4 amos wall. The Gemara in Baba Basra clearly says you can, And the Gemara quotes there what we saw in number 2, because you can tell your neighbor, you're not allowed to look at my stuff because you're going to damage it. And then you could force your friend to build a 4-amma wall. That's the Ravid's Kasha on the Rambam. And everybody asked this. So look at number 6.
Where does it ever say that you can tell your friend he's not allowed to? It says the friend shouldn't, and then you shouldn't build your field.
So the Gemara Basra says, since your friend is not allowed to, therefore you could force him to contribute to the wall. Look at number 6. So the Rambam was attacked. Shuv, I'm sorry, it's small words. This is the Migdal Oiz. His name is Reb Shem Tov, was his first name. His last name was not Shem Tov, only his first name. No. He's
not
he's
the grandfather.
He's not from. He's not from the.
You're never going to forget that name.
His last name was Goin. Reb Shem Tov ben Avrom Goin. His first name was Shem Tov. He was in the end of the 1200s. And the Rishonim. Anyhow, he says, Shuv Matzasi, I found L'chachme Lunil. The city called Lunil. Lunel is in southeast France, Provence, and the Chachamim there were supporters of the Rambam for the most part. And the Chacham of Lunel asked the Rambam, and we read, Shohalu, they asked to the Rambam Zal, V'hishivam, and he answered V'zel L'shon. So this is an answer the Rambam wrote. The Sefer Kinyan, the Rambam refers to his Sefer called Sefer Kinyan. Nimtza Kosovo boy is found there, Sheben Gilel into one garden or another, Sagi, it's enough with 10 tfachim. Ubetchilas Baba Basra Mashma, the Yosef Pshittalon beginner, that it's more pashut, it's more obvious by a garden, that Hezek, Riyashmei Hezek, that the person watching could be damaging more than a backyard. And by a backyard, you can, when you want to sunbathe, you can make your friend pay for a 4-amma, a 6.5-foot wall, so you can have privacy. So for sure, buy a garden where you have, the guy could damage your crops through his jealousy. The Imkain, he says, Amai loy tzarich, you're asking me, why don't I need 4 ammas in the garden? Yoreinu, Moreinu, Goinenu, this is the terms that the Chachamim of Lunel said, teach us, our teacher, our Goin, Kitzmeim anachnu, we're thirsty for your tshuva, Ka'ayol Tadr Galafike Moim, like the ayol screams on the water.
Who's he
The
asking?
this is the Chachmei Lunil are asking the Rambam. The Rambam's just quoting.
He's actually asking the Rambam?
Yeah. They sent a letter to the Rambam. Yeah. This is while the Rambam is alive.
Wow.
The Migdal Oiz, Reb Shem Tov, is quoting a letter that he found. He got hold of a letter. Maybe the letter's being auctioned off as we speak. That the Chachmei Lunil asked the Rambam while the Rambam was alive in Egypt. They sent a letter from France to Egypt asking the Rambam, how do you paskin this way? L'chayr, it's against the Gemara. It's a tshuva, the Rambam, this is a well-known answer of the Rambam, where he says what he thinks about Ayin Hara. They wrote so respectful, first he wipes the floor with them. The Rambam says big people like you shouldn't be asking such questions. Don't you see the difference between when someone invades your privacy? That's mamish damage. That your friend should look at you when you're standing and you're sitting and you're doing your private things. Versus hezek re'iyah, that he sees your produce mishum eino bisha, because of a bad eye. Elo divrei chassidus heim. The Rambam says not to look at somebody's produce while it's growing is not a halachic issue. It's just piety. It's not appropriate. The Rambam holds Ayin Hara cannot do damage. The Rambam doesn't believe. The Rambam doesn't believe in Ayin Hara. What?
He says it goes up to the Eibush.
No, the Rambam doesn't believe.
Who's the king?
No, that was the Michtav Melio explaining, according to those that say it works, how does it work? The Rambam says the whole thing's a myth.
Because the Rambam's not in
Or it's Divrei Chassidus, what? He's not finished yet. He's not finished yet. Yeah. The Rambam is very. The Rambam says, that what's Divrei Chassidus? Shaloy ayin boy ba'ayin ra. It's not appropriate to look at someone's property with jealousy. What good's going to come out of it? Nothing good's going to come. It's not appropriate. But there's no halachic prohibition. You're not going to damage the guy's stuff. Give me a break. If you have something and someone's upset, he's not going to damage it. He's not going to damage it. When the Gemara said, the Gemara in Baba Basra said what I quoted, that since Rav in number 2 says that your friend's not allowed to look at your produce, therefore you could force him to build a wall. Nah, shinuya ba'amahu. The Gemara just said it was part of the discussion there. It's not a libud hilchasa at all. And therefore you cannot force your friend to build a wall between the gardens. Because he can't damage. He can't damage. Rav said it's osur. The Rambam holds it's not really osur. When Rav said it's osur to look, it's just what's appropriate. You shouldn't gaze at someone else. It's not appropriate because what good's going to come out of it? So therefore, if you're worried your friend's going to look at you with jealousy, or because he's going to act inappropriate, doesn't mean you can force him to pay for a wall. That's the Rambam's opinion. And the Iker Hezek Re'iyah by a Chatzor, where people live, but by Ganas, by gardens, ain't no tzorich for Amas, because only b'mechitza asar. Fine. So the Rambam, this is a halachic tshuva that the Rambam wrote his own handwriting to the Chachmilun who asked him what he says against the Gemara. So the Rambam says the Gemara, that wasn't the conclusion. In conclusion, when Rav said it's osur to look, it just means milsa de chasidus, because ultimately Ayin Hara cannot really cause any damage. What's interesting is what we saw in number 2, Rav's statement where he said it's osur to look at somebody else's field. The Rambam doesn't quote that anywhere. He doesn't quote it anywhere. The Rambam never writes in any of his Sfarim, it's osur to stare at somebody else's thing with jealousy. Rav said it's osur, so why doesn't the Rambam codify it in halacha? Well, you see here, he holds Rav used a very harsh expression, it's forbidden. It never meant that. It's just milsa de chasidus.
Look what the Gemara says, sheyama. What does standing mean? Standing means you hold yourself higher than somebody else. That's why you're not allowed to just stop.
So
a chassid coming to another guy's field, like Baruch Hashem, the guy's doing well.
Right.
I mean, it's
hold on, so we're heading. That's a shtei hecher. Anyhow, but we're heading to something fascinating. First, go to the next page. Look at number 7. What the Vilna Gaon says about this Rambam. This is a famous statement to the Vilna Gaon in his commentary on Shulchan Aruch, and he says like this: the Rambam, number 7, Vuhu, the Rambam nimshich achar philosophia. The Rambam went too far after philosophy. V'loch and Kosov, therefore the Rambam says shekshafim. The Rambam holds witchcraft, v'shemus, and using names of God or names of v'lachashim and incantations, v'shedim and demons, v'kameis and amulets. Hakol hu sheker. The Rambam holds it's all bogus. Astrology as well. The Rambam holds it's all false.
Wasn't he a big astronomer?
Astrology. Astronomy is the physical movements of the heaven. The astrology is what it represents, what it means. The Rambam, the astrology is all Baba Mises. Says the Vilna Gaon, Avol kvar hiku oisal kod kodoi. They already whacked the Rambam on his skull. Shari Matzinu, we find so many stories in Gemara. Al Pishemis v'kshafim. This is a story when we did the Kabbalah Mises. Amra ihi milsa vasar to la'arba, when the witch tried to stationize the boat, and then the Amoraim said something back. The contradiction in Rashi, if they said a name of God or a name of black magic. Look at look at the next line. The Torah says Vayir Taninim. The magicians of Parai turned their staffs into snakes.
But that's black magic.
The Rambam though holds all black magic. No, the Rambam holds all. Yeah, for sure. If the Rambam says that shemus don't work, you can be certain that black magic doesn't work. That the Rambam famously says, why did Hashem say don't do black magic? Because it's foolish. The Ramban argues and says, no, the Eibishter gave koyach to Tumah to break the rules of nature, and it works, and that's why Hashem said don't do it, because we should rely on Him.
Even Navi.
Exactly. Hashem gave us Nevi'im instead of...
No, but you have in Navi, like, where Shol, where...
We had a long shir about the story of Shol, 3 opinions. Reb Shmuel Bar Yeya, many hold that was all bogus. But big Rishonim hold. Anyhow, says the Vilna Gaon, look in Zoyer, v'chein kameim bahar b'mekaymus. The Gemara in Shabbos speaks a lot about kameis, v'lachashim and incantations. Robim l'sap, I can't even count, says the Vilna Gaon, how many times Chazal speak about it. So why did the Rambam deny all of it? V'halosofia hitasai. The Rambam went too far into philosophy. It's funny, the Ramban was accused by his students for going too far into Kabbalah. The Ramban, we also spoke a whole shit about the Ramban once. When he was younger, he had issues with Kabbalah, but then he dived all the way in, and his own students said he went way too far. Well, says the Vilna Gaon, the Rambam went way too far in philosophy. B'roiv lekcha. He learned so much of it that it persuaded him to take all of these statements of Gemara and say the Gemara, the Gemara never meant it.
What is haltzing?
What?
Haltzing. What is haltzing?
Halot, halot's like the Gemara is being poetic. The Gemara, it's mishalim. The laker oisam mipshatan, to uproot them from the simple meaning. The Chas v'sham, says the Vilna Gaon, Eini ma'amin behem, I don't believe in the words of the philosophy. V'loi mehem, not from them, mehamoinam, from those that from the multitudes of philosophers. Ela kol hadvarim hem kipshatan, all of the words of the Gemara is literal. Ela sheyesh ben pnimius, but zichur, the Gemara also has depth of meaning, there's Kabbalistic meanings, but it's also literal. He says, "Loi pnimius." I don't mean the pnimius of the Baalei philosophia. Shehem chitzonius. The philosophers think that they know what the Gemara really meant. They think the Gemara spoke about magic. That was a mashal for something very philosophical. Says the Vilna Gaon, as pnimius as they think their pshat is, they're still chitzonius. What I mean is Kabbalah, Elo shal Baalei emes. That's Kabbalah.
Can we learn that the Gra have made a go as well?
Yeah, he made
Yeah.
I mean,
Exactly. Yeah.
from
Right.
experience.
Well, right. So that's safer Yitzira. Right.
No, meaning
Yeah.
He's a shitasa.
Yeah. He started. He said. He started, but then he saw an image that he realized he had to stop. Now, so I want to tell you though that for a long time ago there was a guy Tzvi Hersh Katzenellenbogen, I don't know, 150 years ago or so, where he said that he knows for sure the Vilna Gaon never wrote this against the Rambam. This is very degrading for the Rambam.
You say he goes so good. It sounds like a.
Yeah, and to say that the philosophy Hitasai veered the Rambam away from the truth.
Right way.
It's a very, how do you write such a thing? Right. So there.
Shem Tov also didn't like the Rambam. That was
It's true. It's true. No. The Zayd, no. There were plenty. Hello, in the times of the Rambam, they burnt Mern.
Yeah.
They burnt it. But by the times of the Vilna Gaon, so this Katzenellenbogen felt it doesn't surpassnished. He believes somebody else wrote it. Those that printed the Vilna Gaon's commentary, they stuck this in. So the funny thing is that at that time there was a wealthy guy who had a huge collection of manuscripts, a Litvischer fella, don't remember his name, but he had the manuscripts of the Vilna Gaon's commentary on Shulchan Aruch. The Vilna Gaon has many Sfarim that he never wrote, written by his Talmidim, but one thing he wrote is his commentary on Shulchan Aruch. And there was a wealthy Litvischer guy who had, 200 years ago, had the original manuscripts. So some Rabbonim went to his house to let's go find out, is this paragraph there or it's not there? And they went through all of it, and they found the Simon, and they found the Vilna Gaon's own handwriting, and it's there. It's there. He wrote it.
So this was after Katzenellenbogen said this.
Katzenellenbogen said he's sure it wasn't, but then these rabbis said, "What do you mean? We saw." At some point, they saw it, and they testified that they saw it. Anyhow, Al Kaponim, this is the Rambam's take. The Rambam and Ayin Hara as well feels there's nothing real authentic to it. You can't demonstrate. So what's our shaila? Hold on. Hold, my time is short, so I want to. This similar to what?
It's similar to that. If you don't believe in it, it's not true.
That's the
Hold on. We're getting there. It depends if you ask the Rebbe
or
Chaim
Kanievsky. That doesn't have an effect.
It depends. Of course, that was the. So, no. So here's the issue, though. The kasha, after all this, is the following kasha. If you look in Rabbi Yosef Kaira's Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Yosef Kaira has a siman where he speaks about the prohibitions of damaging. We quoted from that siman when we gave a shir in shul the other day about falling through the wind and damaging someone's property by mistake, by accident, different levels of accidents. In that very siman, Rabbi Yosef Kaira quotes the Gemara from number 2, and Rabbi Yosef Kaira says it's usher to look at somebody else's things while they're growing. He writes Osir. Osir. Not like the Rambam never quotes that statement in his entire Sefer. Because the Rambam in his Tshuva we saw in number 6 says it was Rav never meant it. Rabbi Yosef Kaira, following the tour before him, quotes that there is a prohibition, and it's not on the paper, you have to just believe me. He quotes it's a prohibition. I didn't have time to get it on. It's a he quotes the words of Rav in number 2, the way they are. Osir without mincing any words, and that means it's Osir. Well, he quotes this statement. Now you would think if he quotes the statement that he holds is Osir, so how big does the wall have to be between the gardens? 4 amos. But if you look in the Simon where he speaks about, he says only 10 fachim. He says some say 4 amos, which is the Ravid, but the first opinion, which is the main opinion, 10 fachim, the Rambam.
Just quoted that.
The Rambam, the Tshuva says, you know why he holds 10 Tfachim? Because he doesn't believe that the Isser of number 2 is serious. But if Yosef Kaira quotes the Isser, it's mamash Asr to look. And the reason is because you could damage. If you hold it's really Asr, it's because you could damage. So then you could force 4 amas. So this is a big kasha. So the answer is like this. You got to look at number 8 and number 9, 2 Gemaras.
The famous Gemara, we learn this together.
And this is really the climax of...
Thank you.
The climax of our discussion. Number 8. Rabbi Yochanan have a rogel. Rabbi Yochanan was accustomed to have a ka'azul v'yosef ashari tefillah. Rabbi Yochanan would sit by the women's mikveh. Amar, he said, Kisolkum b'neitzol, when the girls come out, v'ashim, when they come out of the mikveh, mistachlan be, they gaze at me. And then at night, when they're with their husbands, they'll still have a memory of me, and that will affect the way the kids come out. V'neveluhu zara, they'll have kids, the shapiri kavasi, that are beautiful like me. Rabbi Yochanan had an interest. Rabbi Yochanan, the Gemara says, was huge. That was huge. He had no beard. He had extremely long eyebrows. That's why he couldn't see anything by the mikveh. And his skin was glowed in the dark. The Gemara says in the beginning of Brachos. So and he looked like a woman. That like Reish Lakish originally thought he was a woman. He ran after him thinking it was a woman.
Jumped over the whole lake.
So Rabbi Yochanan had a very interesting image. Yeah, but he wants all these. I guess he wants more people to look like him. Anyhow, but he says Shapiri, they should be beautiful like me. In another Gemara, the version is, I want that the kids will be scholarly like me. Amrilay, so the Rabbanon said, Loika mistafe mar, aren't you afraid of Ein Abishav, a bad eye? So Amrilu, he said, Ana mizara de Yosef, because I come from Yosef. The loy sholta be Ein Abishav, no bad eye affects him. What's the source? The Gemara quotes 3 sources. Yosef was benched, Bain Peres Yosef. Yosef is a son of grace. Bain Peres, Ali Oin, above the eye. Amar Abivo, don't read Ali Oin on the eye, rather Oile Oin, above the eye. That Yosef is above unaffected by anyone's evil eye. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Chanina says from elsewhere, Yankov benched Menashe and Ephraim, V'yidgu, they should be like fish, Leroy, because they should multiply like fish. Just like fish in the water protects them from the eye. The Ayin, Hara shall let to spam. They're protected by the water. So to Zara shall Yosef, Ayin Hara shall let to spam. The Gemara gives a third answer. Yosef didn't allow his eye to linger and enjoy the view of the sight of his mistress, the wife of Potiphar. Ayin shaloi rotzasa lozun mimash ein shaloi, his eye that didn't want to enjoy what was not his. He is rewarded ein ayin hara shall let us by. Which is actually, this is what we started off.
He's from Yosef.
Hold on. Eliyahu HaKohen Izmir, when he asks, how could the luchas be affected by the Ayin Hara, he quotes his Gemara and says, if Yosef, who obeyed the Torah by shutting his eye, was rewarded, the Ayin Hara can't affect him.
Itself.
Imagine the Torah itself. So he can't understand the luchas. And we answered from Reb Chaim Falaji, it was our sin of the egel that we corrupted the luchas. When the Gemara says that Yosef, what was Rabbi Yochanan's trick? He comes from Yosef. The truth is, the Mukubalim say that Rabbi Yochanan was a Gilgul of Yosef. We had a whole shir about this once as well. That's why Rabbi Yochanan was always a man about the future. He says, Chatish, you're not allowed to have a half a kazayas of treif because you might go and have another half a kazayas. Whereas Reish Lakish is a Gilgul of Yishmael, he's always living in the present. That's Reish Lakish allows you to have a half a kazais. Anyhow, but Rabbi Yochanan's a Gilgul of Yosef, granted. But do you think he comes from Yosef? I want to prove to you he doesn't come from Yosef. You know why? The Gemara says in Masechta Shabbos that Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi came from David HaMelech. And therefore, whenever he learned the story about David HaMelech with Bathsheba, a very shady Maisa, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi gave it a positive twist. The Gemara says because he came from David, he twisted the psukim to give a very favorable interpretation for his Zayda.
Who was this?
Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. But Rabbi Yochanan doesn't do the same thing for Yosef. What do I refer to? It's another Gemara in Shabbos, elsewhere in the Masechta Shabbos. The Gemara there brings a debate. When Yosef went to his master's house on that fateful day when the whole family was gone, they were all chveis in church in the cloister for some holiday, and the only one was in the house was him and the mistress. And it says he went into the house to do malachto, to do his business. So the Gemara says, Machloikas, Rav Shmuel, was it to do his accounting work or to do the business with the woman? And Rabbi Yochanan says it was to do the deed. So again, if he comes from Yosef, then he should do what Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi did to David. He should be the first one. Rabbi Yochanan said Yosef went in to do his accounting.
Unless he knew.
So therefore, hold on. So I want to taina that he doesn't come. He doesn't come from Yosef. So how can I say that? He says that he does. Look at the next Gemara, number 9. Number 9, the Gemara towards the end of Brachas. Hai man ta'ayel. If somebody enters into a city, v'dochel, you're afraid of the Ayin Bisha v'Ayin Hara. You know what you're supposed to do? You come to a new place for Shabbos. You walk into shul, and you're worried. Exactly. So link it. You know what you do? Link it zakfa diyadad yamin. You take the thumb of your right hand, biyadad is small in your left hand, and the thumb of your left hand, v'zakfa diyadad is small, the thumb of the left, biyadad yamin in the right hand. So you go like this. That's how you. So if you ever see someone walking into shul like this, you know exactly what they're thinking. They think they're on top. They think they're on top of the world. They're working exactly.
Thumb of your left hand into your right hand.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Left
You got to
hand.
practice. You got to
Left
practice.
hand above the right.
Yeah, you're too natural for you. Too natural.
Ready for my golf swing.
Randy's gonna come to Shabbos tomorrow.
So the Gemara says, "V'lei mahach." You have to say the following: I'm not playing. I come from Yosef. This is what everyone should say. The loy shol to be ein bisha doesn't affect him, and the Gemara quotes Ben Peres Yosef, al tikrei on the eye but above the eye, and then the yid golaroiv. Look at one line down. The v'i dochel me'ena bisha delay. What if you're afraid of your own ayin hara? So, when the last line, if you're afraid of your own ayin hara, what does that mean? Either it means you're afraid you might give somebody else an ayin hara, or there are some say there's an Indian you can cause an ayin hara to yourself.
Wow.
Very strange idea. But the simple meaning is, what if you're worried that you might cast an ayin hara on somebody else? What if you're worried you walk into shul and you're worried, you might be envious of somebody else. Lech say you should look atarfe on the skin the nechire the smole of your left nostril. So you got to gaze on your left nostril, and that way you won't be able to see anybody in the shul. And that's what it says. You got to gaze at your left nostril.
X-Men.
No chanting.
Hop on one foot.
No
Why
chanting.
didn't you say the
No,
third reason?
You don't say Ben Peres, nothing.
No, because the Ben Peres, to say I come from Yosef means I'm not affected. Yosef could cast ayin hara on others. So the Marsha asked in this Gemara, how could everyone walk in and say I come from Yosef? What if you don't?
Right.
So the Marsha says every Yid really comes from Yosef, because in Tehillim it says Hashem Hazina Noyeg Katsoin Yosef. You lead the Yidden like sheep. I mean, we refer to the Yidden as Yosef. The Medrash says since Yosef sustained us while we were in Egypt, we're all called Al Shmuel.
Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you another pshat over here. And the pshat is what Mendel said. There's a Gemara in Psachim at the end which speaks about the 4 cups of wine on Pesach. You're not supposed to do things in pairs and doubles. And the Gemara is a whole arichis about something very strange, that if you do things in pairs, demons can come. It can be very dangerous. Zugos. It's a whole Gemara about zugos, not doing things in pairs. What?
Odds? Evens and
Yeah, evens, yeah, things like that. And the Gemara, though, there says the following words. You know who the demons can have an effect on? Someone who's worried, anxious. Man the cup, if you make it into a big deal, it becomes a big deal. Man the loy cup, if you don't think it's a big deal, then it won't have an effect on you. The Gemara says it black and white. It says it about Zugas. In other words, if you feel, so it's like tracht good. If you feel Moshe was afraid, the famous Sikha, Moshe was afraid Paro is going to hear about that he killed the Mitzri, and Paro Taka heard. Had he not been afraid, it never would have happened.
You had a share on that.
Maybe, I don't know if I gave a share on it.
No, we did.
Probably came up in one of the discussions. So the Rebbe in a letter tines that the same thing by Ayin Hara. The Gemara is talking about Zugas doing things in pairs, but the Rebbe learns Ayin Hara. Does Ayin Hara exist or not? You decide. You decide.
Is there a Gemara in Shabbos?
That Ayin Hara.
It's always Ayin Hara, always things in Mazel should be so.
Ein Mazel Yisrael, but that's not Ayin Hara. That's about being born at different days and different hours. But the Ayin Hara, it all depends. If you make it into an issue.
What do you mean? How do you go against the Clara, Gemaras, and everything?
No, that's
to you.
No, in other words, no. There's
All this is up to you?
There's the less you make of it, the less it's going to exist. It could be can't eradicate it completely. No, but definitely the more of an issue you make of it, the more you allow yourself to be controlled by it, the more it will control you. Reb Chaim Kanievsky disagrees. Reb Chaim Kanievsky tines that Gemara in Psachim was only about Zugas, doing things in pairs. Ayin Hara does not depend on your attitude. But the Rebbe disagrees. And Rebbe Vadia Yosef
What are the Rebbe's proofs? Or is it just one
there
line?
There is a Ran in the Dorim that might be a proof. But upon him, I don't think so. Avadia Yosef has a long discussion where he also agrees with the Rebbe on this issue. That you know why the Rambam cast away the Indian of Ayin Hara? With the Rebbe's Pshat,
to change the behavior of the people.
If you believe Hashem Echad, the Eibush Shafir Tevel, there's no other power, then there won't be any other power. It's like they say they once brought the Rambam to a house full of Shadim to show the Rambam there's demons there. And he came there, and when he came, they all disappeared. In front of the Rambam, they don't exist. And we can all be a little Rambam. So that's the word to the Gemara number 9. The Gemara said you should say you come from Yosef. What if I don't? You don't have to come from Yosef. If you say, Ich halsich, I'm a Yosef guy. I'm holding back, just like Yosef was benched, that he's invincible, the Eibishter protects him. I walk around with the same stolz, you will be protected. You should say it, you should believe it. So too Rabbi Yochanan Lav Dafka comes from Yosef. Like we said, because he didn't defend Yosef in the story about going into the house, but he lived it.
So it's even in the Gemara that it doesn't exist.
Right, exactly. So the fees that you mamish see from both of these Gemaras. That is exactly. I want to say, the fees you go back to Rabbi Yosef Kaira. Rabbi Yosef Kaira seemed to contradict himself. On the one hand, he says looking at someone else's garden is a full prohibition. He takes it literally. It's prohibition. And the reason it's prohibited is because you could hurt the guy. Here's the thing. Imagine you have two neighbors. I'm over here and you're over there. I want to force you to build a wall. Why? Because you're not allowed to look at my stuff. Why? Because you could damage. But you can only damage if I make myself susceptible to it. I can't force you to build a wall if the reason why there's going to be damage is because I'm the one.
I'm in control.
Yeah, that's the word. So the answer is very simple. The answer is very simple. Rabbi Yosef Kaira says, if you're looking at someone's crop, it's usher. You could damage it. But he can protect himself. If he davens every day and really believes that your Ayin Hara won't hurt him, it won't hurt him. So he can't force you to build the wall.
Spectacular.
Because it's up to him if you damage him or not.
That you can force him, that's the
Yeah. Or when it comes to in your home, is Pasha invading your privacy, it's direct damage. But here, since you're the one who has the choice or not, you can't force him to build the wall.
I can't tell him to build a wall, and I can just not have let it affect on me, and then he won't have to spend
it's not so easy for you. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make him a direct damager when the ball is in your court. And that's what Rabbi Yosef. So if you take the word of the Rebbe and you learn that in the Gemara over here, then it very much answers Rabbi Yosef Kaira's opinion on the matter. I'll say this comes up all the time in shul about giving an aliyah. two brothers, one after the other.
Yeah.
A father and a son, a Zayd and an Einikel.
Yeah.
So in Shulchan Aruch, it's quotes from Maram of Rottenburg. I mean, he's the one that says, Minadin, there's no problem, but you shouldn't do it.
Right.
Because of Ayin Hara. When people see the whole family together, it could cause an Ayin Hara.
Yeah, that guy's getting now his due.
So there are many that are mekel, there are many that are lenient. Avadia Yosef says you could be lenient on it nowadays. Avadia says nowadays people aren't so superstitious. People are bigger believers. He says it's only an issue of Ayin Hara if the brothers allow themselves to be susceptible to it. But if they're big maminim, they can go right in. So he paskin that halacha nowadays doesn't apply. That's how far he went. That's how far he went. So let's say by a Zayd and an Einukul.
We don't do it, brothers.
He said it's no problem.
No, but some places there's a problem. But because it's a machloikas there, you could throw this into the mix and say, no, whenever there's a machloikas, if you Ayin Hara or not, you could throw this into the mix and say, well, even if there is, you can kind of protect yourself from it.
Say maybe saying like if you wear a smile, like good things happen, like good things happen.
We have our daveners here.